Okay, so now you want to do dynamic bones. So first things first, we're going to go to our model that we just imported. We'll go down to our armature. We'll find our head bone or wherever we want to attach our dynamic bones to. You can either do each bone individually by hitting Add Component, selecting Dynamic Bone, and you want to drag the root from your hierarchy in the top left to your root of your dynamic bone on the right. And you can set whatever settings you want. I'll be going over that later in this video. Otherwise, if you don't want to do each individual bone, you could do it the lazy way by going to the one higher up in the object hierarchy, or the one bone higher up. You can hit Add Component, do the same thing. Make sure the root is dragged in. We're just going to add an exclusion to that, just so it doesn't move itself. Because if we're doing the head bone, we don't want the head to be all floopy. If we notice, there's also things in this hierarchy we don't want to have being all floopy as well, like our eyes. So I'm going to add 2 more exceptions to that, or exclusions, and I'm just going to drag those into there. We will want to collide with our hands, so we will be adding 2 colliders. You could obviously add more if you want to collide with your face or other parts of your body, like say if you're doing the boobas. Yes. Okay, so then we want to go to our left arm and our right arm. I usually recommend doing it on our middle finger, so I'm just going to find our middle finger right here, Add Component, Dynamic Bone Collider. If you notice the sphere is way too big, I'm going to set this to about 1/20th of the scale. And I'm going to add a height to it just so it's a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to go like that. This collider here is actually a cylinder, so it's not just 2 balls, so the spaces in between them are actually connected, which is really nice. But you can just select the 3 dots at the top right, hit Copy Component. You can find your other middle finger on the other side, right? And you can just paste component values in as paste component as new by hitting the 3 dots again. And then when we go back to our head bone here, our dynamic bone script, we can go into the colliders, and you can either drag and drop them in there, or you can hit the little 3 dots and find them in here. You can always just select them, so you can always just do it that way. There we go. But since we want to collide with our bones, we also need to add a radius to those bones, so we need to go to the radius tab. I'm going to set this to like, I don't know, 0.02. I'm going to add a distribution curve as it decides which parts of the bone are what size at what time. So at the beginning, obviously, the earlier bones that are connected will be smaller if it's at the lower part. Otherwise, if it's higher, it'll be larger. And then it follows the curve to the end of the bone. So any bones in between will follow this curve for size. You can also do this for any of your other settings as well, like your dampening, distribution, elasticity, stiffness, and so on. Otherwise, let's go through what these settings do. So we have our damping. Our damping value, I usually recommend having at a value of around 3 or 4. Our elasticity, you want to have a little bit lower, of usually about 0.5. Stiffness, you want to have usually a 4 or a 5. And inert, I usually leave off. It is not required. So what damping does, it's resistance to movement, how badly it wants to stay in the same position. Elasticity is how bad it wants to return to its original position or original rotation. Then we have our stiffness is our max angle. So if you have like a 0.9 or 0.95, it really won't want to rotate a lot. Then our inert, again, I don't really know what inert does, but whatever. You can probably Google it if you really need. I should probably Google it and teach you guys about whatever. Then we have our gravity and our force. So gravity is a directional force that is a lot more accurate than just force. Force is based off of your model's rotation, so it'll always go in the direction of your feet or your anchor on your model, not necessarily your feet, because you could rotate your feet and that's not going to change your force. So basically, if you lean your model to the left by sitting in a seat, your force will still point your hair towards your feet or towards the anchor of your model. While gravity will take the force from the world, the actual direction of gravity from the world itself, and apply it to your model in that direction. So it's always going to be down. So I usually recommend doing gravity, so I'm going to set to negative 0.0. I'm going to make this a really small value. Obviously, these values will change once Avatar Dynamics comes out, because all these values are way different on the new beta, and again, I'll be going through all those stuff once that comes to the official branch, not just the freaking beta. But yeah, now we can go into play mode and test our dynamic bones here. Just make sure we're on scene, select our model in the top left in the hierarchy, and we should be able to move our avatar around. As you can see, everything flows. If you ever notice things aren't moving the way you want, you can always do those bones individually, and the way you would do that. Also, remember to leave play mode. Anything you do in play mode will not be saved. Yeah, so if you go to your head bone here and you want to say, I don't know, the ears were moving too much, but they're still attached to everything else, just go into the exclusions, add them to exclusions, right? We'll just add the ears there, right? And then we can go into our ears here and we could just add component, dynamic bone, make sure we drag the root into each one. Just gonna copy component here and just paste component in because pure laziness. There we go. Make sure we drag the root in there again as well. Now we can have our own custom settings for the ears so they're, different. You could also do this for every bone as well. You don't have to do it on the root itself. But yeah, so if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. If you disliked it, why are you still watching? There's so many YouTubers that do this kind of stuff better. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Oh, for the hand colliders, this is my third time recording this one, whatever. For your hand bones here, you can do it on each individual finger if you wanted to. If you want to be able to grab things, you can either do it just palm and fingers, or you could do 2 sets of fingers, then your palm, or you could just do every individual noodle. The game doesn't like having too many colliders as there's a lot of collision checks, but yeah, that is a thing. Figured I would put that in the little tidbits at the end. Sorry.